Jacob Miller sat in his small office on Mars Settlement 7, staring at the flickering holographic display in front of him. The message indicator blinked with an insistent blue light that demanded his attention. He had been reviewing supply reports for the past 3 hours, and his eyes burned from the strain. But this message was different. It came from an old Earth address, one he did not recognize, yet something about it made his heart beat faster. He tapped the screen and the message opened. The text was simple and brief, but the name at the bottom made him freeze in his chair. Danny Cooper. That name brought back a flood of memories he had not thought about in years. Danny had been his best friend when they were kids growing up in Seattle. They had done everything together, from building tree houses in the park to sneaking out at night to watch meteor showers from the roof of Danny's garage. Then one day, 15 years ago, Danny and his family had simply vanished. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Jacob had tried to find out what happened, but Danny's parents had left no forwarding address. The house was sold to new owners within a month, and it was as if the Cooper family had never existed at all. Jacob had been 13 years old, and losing his best friend without understanding why had hurt deeply. Now, here was a message from Danny after all these years. Jacob's hands trembled slightly as he read the words on the screen. Jacob, I know it has been a long time. Too long. I am sorry I disappeared without saying goodbye. There were reasons I could not explain back then, but I can now. I need to see you. Please meet me at Gateway Hub Station in the neutral zone. I will be there next week on the 14th. This is important. I hope you still remember our friendship because I never forgot it. Danny. Jacob read the message 3 times. Questions flooded his mind. Where had Danny been all these years? Why did he leave so suddenly? What could be so important that he wanted to meet at Gateway Hub, a massive space station that served as a trading post between different human colonies and a few alien species? He leaned back in his chair and looked out the window of his office. The red surface of Mars stretched out before him, dotted with the transparent domes of the settlement. He had built a good life here as a colonial administrator, helping to manage resources and solve problems for the 5,000 people who called this place home. But there had always been a hollow space in his memories, a chapter of his life that had ended too abruptly. He requested 2 weeks of leave from his supervisor, citing personal business. His request was approved without question since he rarely took time off. 3 days later, he boarded a transport ship heading back toward the inner solar system. The journey to Gateway Hub took 4 days. Jacob spent most of that time in his small cabin trying to prepare himself for the reunion. He wondered what Danny looked like now. Would he recognize him? Would they still have anything in common after 15 years apart? The questions seemed endless. Gateway Hub appeared on the view screen as a massive rotating wheel in space, its lights glittering against the darkness. Ships of all sizes moved around it like bees around a hive. Jacob felt his stomach tighten with nervousness as the transport docked. He made his way through the crowded corridors of the station, passing humans and several alien species he had only seen in photographs. The station smelled like recycled air mixed with cooking food and machine oil. Announcements in multiple languages echoed from overhead speakers. Danny had told him to meet in an observation deck on level 12. Jacob took the elevator up, his heart pounding harder with each passing floor. When the doors opened, he stepped out into a quieter area. The observation deck was a large room with enormous windows that looked out into space. Only a handful of people were there, scattered around the room. Then he saw him. Danny stood by one of the windows, his back turned, looking out at the stars. He was tall now, much taller than Jacob remembered, with dark hair and broad shoulders. He wore simple civilian clothes, a gray jacket and dark pants. Jacob walked toward him slowly, his footsteps quiet on the deck floor. When he was a few feet away, he spoke. Danny? The man turned around and Jacob saw his face for the first time in 15 years. Danny's features were older but unmistakable. He had the same warm brown eyes, the same slightly crooked smile. For a moment they just stared at each other. Jacob, Danny said, his voice thick with emotion. You came. I was not sure you would. Of course I came, Jacob replied. You were my best friend. I never understood why you left. Danny's smile faded and he looked uncomfortable. He glanced around the observation deck, checking to see if anyone was close enough to hear them. The nearest person was at least 20 feet away. Can we sit? Danny asked, gesturing to a bench near the window. They sat down together, and for a moment neither spoke. Jacob waited, sensing that Danny was gathering courage to say something difficult. I did not want to leave, Danny finally said. I had no choice. My family had to go, and I could not tell you why. I wanted to so badly, but it would have put you in danger. Danger? Jacob asked, confused. What kind of danger? Were you in some kind of trouble? Danny took a deep breath and looked directly into Jacob's eyes. Jacob, what I am about to tell you will sound impossible, but I need you to listen and try to keep an open mind. Can you do that? Jacob nodded slowly, feeling a strange sense of dread building in his chest. I am not human, Danny said quietly. Jacob stared at him, waiting for the punchline of some joke, but Danny's expression was completely serious. His eyes showed fear and hope mixed together. What do you mean? Jacob asked carefully. Danny looked around again, then reached up and touched something behind his ear. Suddenly, his appearance seemed to shimmer slightly, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. His features remained the same, but Jacob could now see something else underneath, a subtle difference in the way light played across Danny's skin. I am a Valorian, Danny said. We are a shape-shifting species. We have been living secretly among humans on Earth for over 200 years. I was born on Earth, raised as a human, but I am not one of you. That is why we had to leave so suddenly. That is the truth I could never tell you when we were children. Jacob sat frozen on the bench, his mind struggling to process what he had just heard. His childhood best friend was an alien. The thought seemed absurd, yet he could see the truth in Danny's eyes. This was real. Jacob felt like the floor beneath him had disappeared. He gripped the edge of the bench, trying to steady himself as his mind raced through 15 years of memories. Every moment he had shared with Danny suddenly felt different, like looking at a familiar photograph through a strange new lens. Say something, Danny said softly, his voice filled with anxiety. Please. Jacob opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at Danny, really looked at him, trying to see the alien beneath the human appearance. But all he saw was his old friend, the boy who had taught him how to skip stones across the lake, who had stayed up with him all night when Jacob's dog died, who had always been there when he needed someone. How? Jacob finally managed to ask. How is this possible? You ate the same food we did.
You got sick when we had the flu.
You bled when you scraped your knee falling off your bike. I saw it. Danny nodded. Valorians are very good at blending in. We have been doing it for generations. Our bodies can adapt to consume human food, and we can mimic biological responses like illness. The blood you saw was real. We are not so different from humans in many ways. That is why we chose Earth as our home. Chose Earth? Jacob repeated. You mean you came from somewhere else? Our original world was destroyed in a war centuries ago, Danny explained. The survivors scattered across the galaxy looking for new homes. One group found Earth when humans were still in their early industrial age. We saw a species that was young but full of potential. We decided to live among you peacefully, to learn from you and maybe teach you some things in return without you knowing. We wanted to see humanity grow and develop on its own. Jacob stood up suddenly and walked to the window. He stared out at the stars, trying to absorb everything. A commercial freighter drifted past the station, its running lights blinking in the darkness. Why are you telling me now? He asked without turning around. After all these years, why reveal this secret? Behind him, Danny shifted on the bench. Because I need your help. And because I owe you the truth. When we were kids, keeping the secret from you was the hardest thing I ever had to do. You were my best friend, Jacob. You still are, even after all this time. Jacob turned back to face him. You left without saying goodbye. Do you know how that felt? I thought I had done something wrong. I spent months wondering what I did to make you hate me. Pain crossed Danny's face. I never hated you. Leaving you was the worst day of my life. But we had no choice. The Valorian authorities detected that a hostile alien species called the Kresh had discovered our presence on Earth. They were tracking our family specifically. If we had stayed, they would have found us, and you and your family would have been caught in the middle. We had to disappear to protect you. Jacob sat back down on the bench, feeling emotionally exhausted. The Kresh. You mentioned them in your message, too. Who are they? Danny's expression grew darker. They are an empire that controls dozens of star systems. They conquer other species and force them into servitude. They are brutal and efficient. 200 years ago, some of our people escaped from one of their prison worlds. That is part of why we came to Earth, to hide from them, but they never stopped looking for us. And they found you, Jacob said. They found hints of our presence, Danny corrected, enough to make them investigate. That is why my family had to leave Seattle so quickly. We relocated to a hidden Valorian community where we would be harder to track. I have been living there ever since, learning about our culture, our history, everything I missed growing up as a human child. Jacob rubbed his face with his hands. This is insane. This sounds like something from a bad science fiction movie. I know, Danny said, but it is real. And it is about to become very important for all of humanity, not just Valorians. Something in Danny's tone made Jacob look up sharply. What do you mean? Danny leaned forward, his voice dropping even lower. The Kresh have found Earth. Not just hints this time, but actual coordinates. They know humans exist now. They have been observing your expansion into the solar system, watching you build colonies on Mars and the Moon. And they have decided that humanity would make excellent servants for their empire. Jacob felt cold fear wash over him. They are going to attack us? Their scouts will arrive in about 6 months, Danny said. After that, a full invasion fleet will follow. The Kresh do not negotiate. They do not offer terms. They simply take what they want. We have to warn people, Jacob said immediately. The colonial governments, Earth's military, everyone needs to know. That is where it gets complicated, Danny said. If we reveal the existence of Valorians now, it will cause chaos. Humans will panic. They will question everything, wonder how many aliens are living among them, whether they can trust their neighbors. Some will call for hunting down all Valorians. Others will want to ally with us. Your governments will fracture and argue while precious time slips away. The Kresh will arrive to find humanity divided and unprepared. Jacob saw the problem immediately. But if you do not reveal yourselves, how can you help us prepare? That is why I asked you here, Danny said. You are a colonial administrator. You have authority and connections. You understand how to work within human systems. I need your help to prepare Earth's defenses without revealing the Valorians until the time is right. You want me to lie to everyone I know? Jacob said slowly. I want you to protect your species, Danny replied, and mine. Because when the Kresh come, they will not care whether you are human or Valorian. They will enslave or kill everyone they find. We need to work together, but we need to do it carefully. Jacob stood and walked to the window again. A small passenger ship was docking at one of the station's arms. Inside that ship were people going about their normal lives, unaware that everything was about to change. You said your people have technology, Jacob said. Better than ours? In some areas, yes, Danny confirmed. Nothing that would let us fight off the Kresh alone, but things that could help. Better energy shields, more efficient engines, weapons that could give human ships an advantage. And you would share this technology? If it means saving both our peoples, yes. Jacob was quiet for a long moment. His whole world had been turned upside down in the last hour. His childhood friend was an alien. Earth was facing an invasion, and somehow he was being asked to help save everyone. He turned back to Danny. When we were kids, remember that time we got lost in the woods near your house? Danny smiled slightly. We were gone for 6 hours. Our parents were terrified. You stayed calm the whole time, Jacob said. You kept me from panicking. You found the way home. We found it together, Danny said. Jacob nodded. Then I guess we'll have to do that again. Show me what needs to be done. Danny's relief was visible on his face. He stood up and extended his hand. Jacob looked at it for a moment, then grasped it firmly. The handshake felt completely normal, completely human. Whatever differences existed between them, this basic gesture of trust remained the same. Thank you, Danny said quietly. I know this is a lot to accept. I am still processing it, Jacob admitted. But if what you say is true, we do not have time for me to sit around being shocked. 6 months is not very long. Danny nodded and gestured toward the exit. Come with me. There is someone I want you to meet, and a place I need to show you. It will help you understand what we are dealing with. They left the observation deck and made their way through the station. Danny led him to a private docking bay where a small, sleek ship waited. It looked similar to human civilian craft, but somehow more elegant, with smoother lines and a subtle iridescence to its hull. Is this a Valorian ship? Jacob asked as they boarded. Yes. It will get us where we need to go faster than any human transport. Do not worry, I have all the proper clearances to leave the station. As far as Gateway Hub is concerned, I am a human merchant. Jacob strapped into the co-pilot seat as Danny took the controls. The ship lifted off smoothly and exited the docking bay. Once they were clear of the station, Danny engaged the engines and they accelerated rapidly. Where are we going? Jacob asked, watching the station shrink behind them. To one of Jupiter's smaller moons, Danny replied. There is a Valorian settlement there, hidden inside an old mining complex that humans abandoned 20 years ago. About 300 of my people live there now. The journey took several hours. Danny used the time to explain more about Valorian culture and history. He told Jacob about their homeworld, a planet called Valora that had been caught in the middle of a galactic war. The Valorians had been peaceful people who refused to take sides, and both warring factions had punished them for it. Their world had been destroyed, and less than 10,000 Valorians escaped.
"We scattered across the galaxy in small groups," Danny explained.
Some found refuge with other species. Others hid on uninhabited worlds. The group that came to Earth was about 2,000 people. We have grown to almost 5,000 now, spread across your planet and a few hidden settlements like the one we are going to. 5,000, Jacob said. That is a tiny population. We know. It is one reason why we have worked so hard to remain hidden. If aggressive species like the Kresh knew how few of us there are, we would be easy targets. On Earth, we could blend in and disappear among billions of humans. As they approached Jupiter, the massive planet filled the view screen with its swirling bands of color. Danny navigated toward one of the smaller moons, a rocky gray sphere that looked lifeless and cold. That is Thebe, Danny said, pointing at the moon. Almost no one comes here. It has no valuable resources, and the mining company that tried to operate here went bankrupt decades ago. He brought the ship down toward the surface, heading for what looked like an old industrial complex. Large structures dotted the landscape, connected by tunnels and covered walkways. Everything looked abandoned and dark. But as they got closer, Jacob noticed subtle signs of activity. Lights glowed deep inside some of the tunnels. A few small ships were parked in what appeared to be a maintenance bay, carefully hidden from orbital scans. Danny landed the ship inside one of the larger structures. As the engines powered down, Jacob saw several people approaching. They looked completely human, dressed in practical work clothes. But knowing what he now knew, Jacob studied them more carefully, wondering what their true forms looked like. A woman with short blonde hair stepped forward as they exited the ship. She appeared to be in her 40s, with kind eyes and a welcoming smile. "Danny, you are back," she said warmly. Then her gaze shifted to Jacob and her expression became curious. "And you brought a guest?" "This is Jacob Miller," Danny introduced them. "Jacob, this is Carol Bennett. She leads this community." Carol extended her hand and Jacob shook it. "Danny has told us a lot about you over the years. He missed you very much." "I missed him too," Jacob said, glancing at his friend. Carol gestured for them to follow her. "Come, we have much to discuss and I imagine you have many questions." She led them through the complex, explaining as they walked. The Valorians had transformed the abandoned mining facility into a comfortable home. They have living quarters, growing facilities for food, workshops, and recreational areas. Everything was carefully maintained and powered by fusion generators that produced minimal detectable signatures. "We have lived here for 12 years, Carol explained. "It is not glamorous, but it is safe. Or it was, until the Kresh discovered Earth's location. They entered a large meeting room where several other Valorians waited. Carol introduced them quickly. There was Peter Klein, a tall man who served as the settlement's chief engineer. Next to him sat Linda Hayes, who coordinated communications between different Valorian communities. A younger man named Kevin Ross managed their security systems. "Please sit," Carol said, indicating chairs around a central table. Once everyone was seated, she activated a holographic display in the center of the table. The display showed a star map with Earth at the center. Surrounding it were various markers and trajectory lines in different colors. "This is what we know about the Kresh movements," Carol began. 3 months ago, one of our deep space monitoring stations detected a Kresh scout ship entering this region of space. It spent 2 weeks conducting scans before leaving. We believe it identified Earth as a target. She manipulated the display, zooming in on a different section of space. The Kresh operate from a forward base approximately 30 light-years from here. Based on their standard patterns, they will send a small reconnaissance force first. That will arrive in about 6 months, as Danny told you. If that force reports back successfully, a full invasion fleet will follow within a year. Jacob studied the display, his mind racing. How big is a full invasion fleet? Peter, the engineer, answered. Based on historical records, probably 50 to 70 warships plus numerous support vessels. The Kresh do not take chances. They overwhelm their targets with superior numbers. Earth's combined military does not have anywhere near enough ships to fight that, Jacob said. No, you do not, Carol agreed. Not with your current technology. But if we can upgrade your defenses with Valorian technology, you would have a chance. Not a guarantee, but a chance. Linda leaned forward. The challenge is doing this without revealing our existence too soon. We need to transfer technology, help you build better weapons and shields, and prepare strategic defenses, all while making it appear that humans developed these advances on their own. That is where you come in, Danny said to Jacob. You have authority on Mars Settlement 7. You can approve infrastructure projects, allocate resources, and coordinate with other colonial administrators. If we provide you with technology disguised as experimental human designs, you can implement them as defensive upgrades. Kevin, the security officer, brought up another display showing schematics of various devices. We have adapted our technology to work with human manufacturing processes. These shield generators can be installed on space stations and colonies. These weapons upgrades can be fitted to your existing ships. We have designed everything to look like natural human technological progress. Jacob examined the schematics carefully. They looked advanced, but not impossibly alien. Someone with engineering knowledge might question how humans had made such sudden breakthroughs, but the designs used familiar principles and components. This could work, Jacob said slowly, but I cannot do this alone. I will need to bring others into this, people I trust. We understand, Carol said. Danny will help you identify candidates. People with authority, good judgment, and the ability to keep secrets. We estimate you will need at least a dozen key people in strategic positions across the solar system. And eventually, Linda added, we will need to reveal the truth. The question is when. Too early and we risk panic and division. Too late, and humans will feel betrayed when they learn we hid among them for centuries. Danny looked at Jacob. That is another area where we need your insight. You understand human psychology and politics better than any of us. When the time comes, you can help us find the right way to introduce ourselves. Jacob sat back in his chair, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Months ago, his biggest concern had been managing water recycling systems on Mars. Now he was being asked to help save 2 species from extinction. But as he looked around the table at these Valorians who had lived in hiding for so long, and then at Danny, his oldest friend, he knew he had already made his choice. All right, he said firmly. Let us get to work. Jacob returned to Mars Settlement 7 3 days later with a data chip hidden in his pocket and a plan forming in his mind. The chip contained technical specifications for Valorian shield generators, power systems, and weapons upgrades, all carefully disguised to look like experimental human technology. Carol and her team had spent years preparing these files for exactly this moment. As he walked through the familiar corridors of the settlement, everything looked the same as when he had left. People went about their daily routines, completely unaware that an alien threat was moving toward them through the darkness of space. Jacob felt the weight of his secret pressing down on him, but he kept his expression neutral and professional. His first task was to identify people he could trust. Danny had given him advice on what to look for. They needed individuals with real authority, people who could approve projects and allocate resources without drawing too much scrutiny. More importantly, they needed people with strong character, those who could handle shocking truths and still function under pressure. Jacob spent 2 weeks carefully observing his colleagues. He paid attention to how they handled crises, how they treated others, and how they responded to unexpected problems. Slowly, he built a list of potential allies. The first person he approached was Commander Patricia Logan, the head of Mars Settlement 7 security forces. She was a veteran of Earth's orbital defense fleet, respected by everyone who worked with her. Jacob had seen her remain calm during emergencies, and she had a reputation for thinking strategically rather than emotionally. He invited her to dinner at one of the settlement's small restaurants, a quiet place where they could talk privately. After some casual conversation, Jacob took a deep breath and decided to test the waters. Commander, if you learned that Earth faced a serious threat, something that required immediate preparation but could not be publicly announced yet, what would you do? Patricia set down her fork and studied him carefully. That is an oddly specific hypothetical question, Jacob. Should I be concerned? Just curious about your perspective, Jacob said, trying to sound casual. She was quiet for a moment, then leaned back in her chair. I would want to know the nature of the threat, why it could not be announced, and what preparations were needed. Then I would make a decision based on those facts. But I would not act on vague hypotheticals. It was a careful, measured response. Jacob decided to take a calculated risk. What if I told you the threat was real, and I needed your help to prepare for it? Patricia's expression sharpened. Then I would say you need to be very clear about what you are asking me to do, and why. Over the next hour, Jacob told her everything. He watched her face carefully as he explained about Danny, the Valorians, and the approaching Kresh scouts. To her credit, Patricia did not interrupt. She listened to the entire story before responding. This is the craziest thing anyone has ever told me, she said finally. And yet something in your voice tells me you believe every word. I saw proof, Jacob said. I met them. This is real, Commander. Patricia was silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. I'm not saying I completely believe you yet, but I am willing to see your proof. Show me what you have. Jacob felt relief wash over him. He had his first ally. Over the following weeks, Jacob and Patricia carefully brought 3 more people into their circle. There was Gordon Price, the settlement's chief engineer, a brilliant man who could implement the Valorian technology upgrades. They recruited Helen Carter, who managed supply logistics between Mars and other colonies, giving them the ability to distribute equipment across the solar system. Finally, they approached Alex Rivera, a data specialist who could help cover their tracks and make the upgrades appear as routine infrastructure improvements. Each conversation was tense and carefully managed. Each person reacted differently to the truth. Gordon was fascinated and immediately wanted to study the Valorian technology. Helen was frightened but determined to help. Alex was skeptical at first, but became convinced after Jacob arranged a secret video call with Danny and Carol. Once the team was assembled, they began implementing the first phase of preparations. Gordon started installing shield generators in critical facilities, disguising them as experimental power distribution systems. Helen arranged for similar equipment to be shipped to lunar bases and orbital stations, listing them in manifests as routine replacement parts. Alex created false research records showing that human engineers had been developing these technologies for years. The work was exhausting and stressful. Every decision had to be carefully considered to avoid drawing attention. Jacob found himself working 18-hour days, balancing his regular administrative duties with the secret preparations. Danny visited Mars twice during this period, arriving in disguise as a civilian contractor. He met with the team to answer technical questions and provide guidance. Jacob noticed how naturally Danny interacted with the others, how his genuine concern for humanity's survival helped win their trust. During one late-night planning session, Gordon asked Danny a question that had been on everyone's mind. Why are you doing this? I mean, your people could just leave Earth, hide somewhere else, and let the crash take us. It would be safer for you. Danny looked surprised by the question. Because you are not just some other species to us. We have lived among you for 2 centuries. We have watched your children grow up, we have celebrated your achievements and mourned your losses. Many of us were born on Earth, like me. It is our home, too. We could not abandon you any more than you could abandon your own family. The sincerity in his voice left no room for doubt. In that moment, Jacob saw his team truly accept that they were all on the same side. 3 months into their preparations, they had their first close call. Lieutenant Benjamin Hayes, a security officer who reported to Commander Logan, began noticing inconsistencies in supply records. He started asking questions about the unusual amount of resources being directed to infrastructure projects. Patricia brought the problem to Jacob immediately. Hayes is sharp and he is persistent. If he keeps digging, he will find things we cannot explain. They met in Jacob's office late at night to discuss options. Danny had traveled to Mars again and was present via a secure video link. We could bring him in, Helen suggested. Tell him the truth like we did with the rest of us. Too risky, Alex countered. We do not know him well enough. What if he panics or decides to report everything to Earth Command? Jacob thought carefully. He had observed Lieutenant Hayes over the past few weeks. The man was dedicated and honest, perhaps too honest. He would not accept vague explanations or allow irregularities to continue unchecked. I will talk to him, Jacob decided, but not about the Valorians yet. I will redirect his investigation, give him something else to focus on. The next day, Jacob called Hayes into his office. The lieutenant arrived looking professional but wary. Lieutenant, I understand you have concerns about our recent infrastructure projects, Jacob began. Yes, sir, Hayes replied. The resource allocation patterns are unusual. I am just doing my job by flagging potential inefficiencies. Jacob nodded. You are right to be thorough. The truth is, we received intelligence about potential solar storm activity that could affect our systems. These upgrades are precautionary measures. The information is classified because we do not want to cause panic over something that might not happen. It was not entirely a lie. Solar storms were always a concern for Mars colonies. Hayes seemed to consider this explanation. I would need to see the intelligence reports to verify this, sir. Of course, Jacob said smoothly. I will have Alex send you the meteorological data. You will see that the science supports our concerns. Alex had already prepared false reports anticipating this exact scenario. When Hayes reviewed them later, he found legitimate-looking scientific data that supported Jacob's explanation. The lieutenant seemed satisfied and stopped his investigation. But the incident left Jacob shaken. They had been lucky this time, but how long could they maintain the deception? Every day brought new challenges, new risks of exposure. 2 weeks later, those risks became very real when Danny contacted him with urgent news. Jacob, we have a problem. A crash probe just entered the outer solar system. It arrived 4 months earlier than we expected. Our window of preparation time just got much shorter. Jacob felt his stomach drop. They were not ready. They had installed shields on maybe 20% of the critical facilities. Most of the colonies still had no upgraded defenses at all. How long until it reaches the inner system? He asked. At current speed, maybe 2 weeks. It will scan everything as it comes. Earth, Mars, all the settlements. The Kresh will learn everything about human defenses and weaknesses. Jacob looked out his window at the red landscape of Mars. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars he could see, an enemy probe was approaching. And when it reported back what it found, a fleet would follow. We need to accelerate everything, he said. No more careful planning. We use whatever we have ready and hope it is enough. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of frantic activity. Jacob barely slept as he coordinated efforts across Mars Settlement 7 and reached out to his contacts on other colonies. The Kresh probe was detected by human astronomical stations 3 days after Danny's warning, causing confusion and concern among civilian scientists who had never seen anything like it. Earth Command issued alerts to all colonies, ordering increased vigilance. The timing actually helped Jacob's team because suddenly their defensive upgrades seemed prescient rather than suspicious. Gordon and his engineers worked around the clock installing shield generators on every critical facility they could reach. Danny and several other Valorians arrived on Mars openly now, still disguised as human technical consultants hired to help with the emergency. They brought additional equipment and expertise, pushing the installation teams to work faster. Jacob stood in the command center with Patricia, watching sensor displays track the probe's progress through the solar system. It had passed Neptune and was now approaching Uranus, moving steadily inward. It is scanning everything, Patricia said, pointing at the energy readings on her screen. Every station, every ship, every settlement. The Kresh will know exactly what we have. Then we make sure what they see is impressive, Jacob replied. He opened a communication channel to Gordon. Chief, what is our status on the main colony shields? Gordon's tired face appeared on the screen. We just brought the primary generator online. It is not at full strength yet, but it will protect the central domes. The outlying facilities are still vulnerable. Do what you can, Jacob said. We are running out of time. As the probe entered the inner solar system, Earth Command made a decision that changed everything. They ordered a small fleet of ships to intercept and attempt communication with the probe. Jacob knew this was futile because the Kresh never negotiated, but he could not stop the military from trying without revealing information he was not supposed to have. He watched helplessly as 6 human ships moved to intercept the probe near Mars orbit. The probe responded exactly as the Valorians had predicted. Without warning or provocation, it fired on the approaching ships. The first vessel took a direct hit and exploded instantly. The other 5 scattered, trying to return fire, but the probe's weapons were far more advanced. 2 more ships were destroyed before the survivors managed to retreat to safe distance. The attack was broadcast across all human colonies. Panic spread quickly. People demanded answers. Who had attacked them? Where did this probe come from? What did it want? Jacob stood with Danny in a secure room, watching the news feeds. The time for secrets had ended. We have to tell them, Jacob said. Right now. Before fear turns into chaos, Danny nodded grimly. Carol is already coordinating with Valorian leaders on Earth. We are preparing a simultaneous announcement. But Jacob, when people learn that aliens have been living among them for 2 centuries, the reaction will be intense. I know, Jacob said, but we do not have a choice anymore. 6 hours later, a coordinated broadcast went out across every human communication channel. Carol Bennett appeared on screens throughout the solar system, standing beside leaders from the hidden Valorian communities. She had dropped her human disguise, allowing her true form to shimmer through, subtle differences in her features that marked her as something other than human. People of Earth and her colonies, Carol began, her voice calm and steady. We are the Valorians. We have lived peacefully among you for over 200 years. We come to you now because humanity faces a grave threat, and we can no longer stand by in silence. She explained everything in clear, simple terms. The fall of Valora, the refuge they had found on Earth, and the Kresh Empire that now threatened both their peoples. She showed footage of the probe attack and explained what would follow if the Kresh were not stopped. We share this world with you, Carol continued. Your triumphs have been our triumphs. Your sorrows have been our sorrows. We are ready to stand with you now to share our knowledge and our strength and to face this threat together. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Some humans responded with anger and betrayal, demanding to know how aliens had hidden among them for so long. Others were frightened, wondering how many Valorians lived in their communities, but many, seeing the probe attack and understanding the danger, focused on the immediate threat rather than past secrets. Jacob watched the feeds from Mars, seeing the range of reactions among the colonists. In the settlement cafeteria, people gathered in groups, arguing and debating. Some demanded that all Valorians be identified and separated. Others called for unity against the common enemy. He made his own announcement to Mars Settlement 7 that evening, standing before cameras in the main assembly hall, with Danny beside him. "I know you have questions," Jacob told the gathered colonists. "I know some of you feel betrayed. But I have worked with the Valorians for the past 3 months, and I can tell you this with absolute certainty. They are not our enemies. They are our neighbors, our colleagues, and in some cases our friends. The Kresh probe that killed 3 ship crews today did not care whether its targets were human or Valorian. To them, we are all just resources to be conquered. That is the real enemy we face."
He gestured to Danny.
"This is Danny Cooper. He is Valorian, and he is my oldest friend. He came to me months ago to warn me of this threat. Everything we have done to strengthen our defenses, we have done together. Human ingenuity combined with Valorian technology. That is what gives us a chance to survive." The crowd was silent, processing his words. Then Lieutenant Hayes stood up from where he had been sitting near the back. "I want to verify something," Hayes said loudly. "Those infrastructure upgrades you told me were for solar storm protection. That was a cover story for installing Valorian shields, was it not?" Jacob met his gaze steadily. "Yes, Lieutenant, it was. I apologize for the deception, but at the time we could not risk revealing the truth." Hayes was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "I understand. And for what it is worth, those shields saved lives today when debris from the destroyed ships came toward our settlement. The protection held." A murmur ran through the crowd. The shields had worked. The preparations had mattered. Over the following days, humanity and the Valorians worked to build a unified defense. It was not smooth or easy. There were protests on Earth. Some governments initially refused to work with the Valorians, but the Kresh probe's brutal attack had made the threat undeniably real, and practical necessity slowly overcame ideological resistance. Jacob found himself in an unexpected role as a liaison between the two species. His friendship with Danny and his successful cooperation with the Valorians on Mars made him a trusted voice on both sides. He traveled between colonies, helping to coordinate the integration of Valorian technology with human military forces. 4 months after the probe attack, long-range sensors detected the Kresh fleet entering the solar system. It was even larger than predicted. 73 warships accompanied by dozens of support vessels and troop transports. The combined human and Valorian fleet moved to meet them. 38 human warships, upgraded with Valorian shields and weapons, joined 12 Valorian defense ships that had come out of hiding. It was still outnumbered, but the Alliance had advantages the Kresh had not anticipated. Jacob watched the battle from Mars Command Center alongside Patricia and Danny. The fight was fierce and costly. The Kresh had superior numbers, but the combined fleet fought with coordinated precision. Human pilots used tactics the Kresh had never encountered, while Valorian ships provided covering fire and shield support. The breakthrough came when Gordon's engineering team activated a network of defensive satellites they had secretly positioned throughout the inner solar system. The satellites created overlapping fields of fire that caught the Kresh fleet in a crossfire. Unable to advance without taking catastrophic losses, and surprised by the unified resistance, the Kresh commander made a decision. The fleet retreated. It was not a total victory. Humanity and the Valorians had lost 11 ships and hundreds of lives, but they had proven something important. They were not easy prey. The Kresh would think twice before returning. In the days after the battle, Jacob stood with Danny on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. They had been apart for 15 years, and now they had saved 2 civilizations together. "Do you remember when we got lost in the woods as kids?" Jacob asked. Danny smiled. "You brought that up when we met at Gateway Hub. You told me then that we found the way home together," Jacob said. "I think we just did it again, but on a much bigger scale." Danny nodded. "Humanity and Valorians together. It is a good partnership." "It is more than that," Jacob said. "It is a new beginning. 2 species learning to trust each other, to work together. We proved that different peoples can stand united when it matters." Down below, in the settlements and cities across the solar system, humans and Valorians continued the difficult work of building a shared future. There would be challenges ahead, misunderstandings and conflicts to resolve, but they had crossed the most important bridge together, the one between fear and trust. Jacob looked at his oldest friend and smiled. Their childhood friendship had become something greater, a symbol of what was possible when people chose connection over division, and in a galaxy that often seemed dark and hostile, that made all the difference.